Football, sliced and diced with Sedgemoor FM and Somerset FA.
Welcome to Slice and Diced. We are having a very open and honest conversation about local football. I'm Steve Phillips, and this is Neil Fellows from Sedgemoor FM and Paul Coltman from Somerset FA's marketing consultant.
So, Steve, you grew up in the area, like you, Midsummer Norton, Somerset. How do you start a footballing career in Midsummer Norton and end up where you ended up?
Yeah, very good question. And if that was the case today, you would probably be missed. It was a bit of luck. There's been a bit of luck along the way, but you earn your luck. I think you earn your luck with how hard you work. And it was a case of the main sponsor at Paulton Rovers, who I was playing for, was renting a house out to Martin Cole, who was playing for Bristol City first team at the time. And I was playing for Paulton first team at 16, which was a pretty good level for a goalkeeper. And I think playing in goal, it's much harder to play as a youngster in an adult environment at that level than an outfield player. Yeah. And he said, "Oh, you got to come and look. Get someone to come and look at this boy." And Mike Gibson came out, so he did what he was told. He would put his rent up probably. He did what he was told, and Gibbo came out and watched me on a. So I played for the under-18s and the first team, and he came out and watched an under-18s game first, and then a couple of times in the first team, and then they invited me in for a trial. But I went actually before that came about. I went to Plymouth for 2 weeks, so it was the first time I'd ever left home, not even on holiday, without my parents. And I went down to Plymouth in digs for 2 weeks, and Kevin Blackwell was the goalie coach. And he was horrible, like horrible. All I can remember was it was really tough anyway because of the level. And bear in mind, I'd never been coached. We didn't even have a goalie coach, so everything that I managed to get, the level I managed to get myself to, was self-taught. I used to watch Match of the Day back then, record it, and rewind it.
Which keepers did you like?
David James. Really early on, there was loads. Anyone. I didn't really like anyone in particular. I just watched Match of the Day. I rewound it, and I sort of analysed how they saved it, or if they didn't save it, and why they didn't save it. And it sort of got me to a level where I could stay in the first team, because the lad who was playing in Paulton's first team left to go back to Tiverton on the Friday before Saturday's game. They had no one else. I definitely wouldn't have been their preferred choice, but they had no choice because I was the only goalie at the club, so I was playing in the reserves. And played Larkhall away in the cup and kept a clean sheet, won 1-0, and I loved it. I got 50 quid as well, which was like a quarter of my wages for like something I loved. I couldn't believe it. So I just made sure that I did enough to stay in the team at Paulton, and analysing the best on Match of the Day was the only way I could think that was going to make me learn how to be better and more consistent in my performances. Until something came along, and I didn't expect anything to come along as big as it did, but it did. And I went on trial for 2 weeks and did really well. I played a game against Swansea away, and we won 7-0. I didn't touch the ball, not even one goal kick. And I came back thinking, oh well, didn't really show what I could do in that game. And I got a call. I was working at Mirage Inks, which was a printing stroke ink factory in Radstock, and the three blokes that owned it were really big football fans. And I got a call in the morning, and I was supposed to be working late shifts, and I was 17 by then, just about. And it was Gibbo, and he said, "Oh, Stevie, the lad who was my age is ill, and they had a game against Swindon that night at Clevedon. Can you play?" And I was like, didn't even have to ask the blokes that owned the company. They were brilliant. So I told him, yeah. I told them. They went, yeah, definitely go and play. So I played, and Swindon had got beat 5-0 on the Saturday before. This was a Tuesday night, and they turned up. And they had 7 of the first team that played on the Saturday in the team, and we had like an under-18 stroke under-20 sort of age group. No one had played in the first team for Bristol City, and I was looking at the team sheet, and of course I recognised 7 of the names, and I'm thinking, like, wow, I'm way out of my depth. Anyway, we won 3-2 on the night, and it was one of those games where it could have gone totally the opposite way, and everything could have flew past me, or I'm saving it with every part of my body, and that was another bit of luck along the way. I managed to get in the way of almost everything. We won 3-2 with a very inexperienced side against a really good and experienced side. And on, I think, the Thursday after it, this was just before Christmas in 1996, Gibbo rang me and said, "Look, mate, we think you've got massive potential. we'll give you this year and another season. And because that lad was ill in the morning, that's what happened. Wow. So there's a few little bits of luck that fell my way along my path into professional football. But once I was given that opportunity, there was no way that I wasn't going to do what I did.
It's a bit of luck, dedication.
Watching
those videos, watching match of the day.
Yeah,
what would we do without match of the day?
What would we do?
That's it. And like I'm sort of that character. I'm a bit relentless in everything that I do. So if I cycle as fast, and I want to be the best around. If I run, I want to be the fastest that I run. Yeah. And I'm a bit OCD in that sort of sense, which was good in terms of getting to a level very quickly, because like I said, until I turned pro I'd never been coached, and with 18 months I was playing in the Championship.
Wow.
So you say about through your career you never had a coach. I'm guessing that played a big part in the next step for you, which was becoming a goalkeeping coach.
Yeah. When I was at Bristol Rovers, Lenny Lawrence was the head of football, and I was about late 20s, touching 30, and he said, look, you need to go and do, because he was really in with the Welsh FA, Lenny, being at Cardiff and all that, and he said, look mate, you've got to go and get your badges done. He said you'd be a really good goalie coach, because we had a couple of years. Bristol Rovers never had the money to have a number two who was experienced. It was always a kid or 17, 18, 19 year old, and I always helped them all my career. I always helped the goalies that were younger than me, not in fear of making them better than me, because I just felt that was the right thing to do, because I never had that opportunity when I was young. And he obviously noticed that, and he said go. So I did my badges through the Welsh FA and stuff. And like I said at the start, I was terrible at school. Academic wise, I was terrible. I didn't like it. I found it really hard. And back then, when 25 years ago, you could bunk out of school and you wouldn't get the treatment that you get today, and you wouldn't get fined and you wouldn't get all that sort of stuff. So I managed to get out of school and not do any of my exams, and I was working on a farm, which I loved doing, when I was 14. So I didn't have anything to fall back on, to be honest with you. So it was I love football, obviously. I love developing or helping the younger goalies. And that was the ideal situation for me, was to go and do my badges, which I found really difficult, by the way. Not in terms of knowing the content, but the way that they wanted you to coach, the booklets that you have to fill out that were like this thick, and like I hated anything academic, so pick a pen up was like, oh god.
It's really hard in goalie clubs as well.
Managed to take his origins off that.
Steve, I can see what you've done with that notes.
I know. Sorry about that.
Recycled it.
Get rid of that. So it was a challenge getting over the line with the badges, and I didn't enjoy doing them. I must admit, I didn't enjoy doing them. But I got there, and then my career took me into a place where I had a really great opportunity while I was at Crewe, because John Acterberg's a good friend of mine, who's obviously Liverpool's head of goalkeeping now. Back then he was the reserve team goalie coach, and I played against John for many years. He was at Tranmere for 10 years, I was at Bristol City for 10 years, and lovely guy. So when I was up there, I had a shoulder injury, came back from my shoulder injury, went to play my first game back, was Liverpool under-21s away. So I bumped into John at Liverpool and Mark Morris, who was the academy goalie coach, and we had a chat after and a bit of bite to eat and stuff. He was like, oh, what are you doing? I said, and I just started coaching Crewe's community department. Because I had loads of spare time up there. I was training in the day and stuff, so I would go a couple of nights a week and just do the kids around the community. Really grassroots sort of level. And he said, do you fancy coming up and doing some sessions with our academy? And I was like, oh yeah, didn't think about it. It was an hour at least in the car. But never ever was I going to turn down opportunity to go and coach at Liverpool and listen to Mark and listen to John coach and just see the environment they create for the kids there. So I was playing in the first team at Crewe. I was the goalie coach at Crewe, as well as playing, because they only had another young kid, because they never had the budget for 2 experienced goalies. And I drive twice a week to Liverpool, which could take anything between an hour and 2 hours, bearing on the M6, to get there and coach. And then I'd do the away games on a Sunday. So I'd be going from Crewe to Newcastle on a Sunday morning to take the 11s, 13s and 15s, because it was odds at home, evens were away, or whatever, vice versa. And I did it for a whole season, and the experience I got from that and the learning that I took from that 12 months was exceptional. and it was the best thing I ever did in terms of coaching and my development as a coach. But it nearly killed me. It nearly killed me. And how I managed to keep that and still perform, to perform every day in training, because people forget you're analysed on your performances on the pitch, but if you don't perform in training on a regular basis, then you're at risk of losing your place based on that, and not just your performances. So I had to make sure I lived really well off the pitch to be able to cope with the travelling, and the crew were great. They knew what I was doing, and they knew that I looked after myself. So it was never an issue with my performances. I played really well. We got promoted. We got to the Johnson's Paint Trophy final, won that as well. So it was a really good learning curve. And then I came back and did a bit with Bristol Rovers. I did a bit with, and then I went to Yeovil. So I retired first time round. Came back 6 months. I was playing back at Bath, and then went to Yeovil back here full time for 2-3 years. Was head of goalkeeping and number 2, sort of a dual role, until that came to an end. And then I had a couple of grassroots stuff set up already, that I just grown since.
As I said, your own coaching school, that's obviously pushed on massively, and you are constantly busy, and we've spoke before about the demand for more coaches and the demand that you have on yourself for young goalkeepers. What can you offer, or what can people come to you and get from your coaching school?
Well, firstly, I think in today's world with the Xboxes and phones and all the stuff that stops the children enjoying their childhood that I had, for instance, out on your BMX, out messing about in fields and out running about, and you only went home for tea. That's all I went home for.
We were like cats.
And then my mum used to be like, "Get home for tea," and I'd be like, "Oh, give me half an hour." I'd cut the plug off every Xbox in the whole world. I would, honestly. If I had one wish, it wouldn't be to be a millionaire. It'd be cut the plug off of every Xbox, because all it does is it doesn't allow children to exercise and enjoy themselves doing other things, and I think it's a real shame. So my goalkeeping schools are run in a way that I don't just coach goalkeeping. I teach life skills. I teach people to teach the kids that they need to be out and about and not be on that. Some will take it on board, some won't. It's as simple as that. But if I can influence 50 out of the 150 kids that I coach not to be on their Xbox for 6 hours a day, and to do some other stuff, then I'm doing my job properly. And I teach life skills. Be polite, be on time. I know that's parents based, but maybe I'm teaching the parents to be a bit better. But, all the things. Be polite. Thank the coaches. They collect the balls in. They make sure they get there 10 minutes early, and they practice their passing with both feet, and they don't turn up a minute before and then they're expected to go straight into an intense session. It's not a babysitting centre. It's a goalkeeping session that will develop the goalkeepers from any age, from 6 to 18, in every department of what they're going to be required to deal with in a game.
Okay.
And it's intense and it's fast, and they need to be aware that if they want to get to their best ability, then that will be very massively in terms of that individual. They need to work hard.
It's important what you're saying, though, because it's not just about getting good at sport, it's actually using that to be good at life as well.
Absolutely. I think it's so important that take the sport out of it and the enjoyment of trying to develop as a goalie. I think the other side of that is huge, and I constantly get messages from parents saying that their kids are different at school. They're different at other things they do.
Just streamlines their focus on a particular task or a particular way of being. And obviously, as a goalkeeper, there's lots of personality traits that you would look for in a goalie, and like you said, some of those you need to teach. Not everyone will come to you with those traits. Obviously you're doing it by yourself 99% of the time.
I've managed to accumulate some really good people around me, and not goalkeeping coaches. These are parents of kids that watch intensely and are mesmerised by the development of their own kids. so that they want to be a part of it.
Mhm.
And I've only been allowed to grow it through people like Kev Hurd, who's immense, and you know, without him it would be half the size, because what I don't do is have a line of goalies lined up 10 long that they're stood still for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or even 2 minutes or even 20 seconds. To me, it's not about, I need to earn a living, of course I do, but it's not about the money for me. It's about the engagement in the session for the children, and not to be stood around freezing cold and lose interest, because once they've lost interest, you may as well pack up and go home.
One last question though, bit of pressure. You work with a lot of young goalkeepers. Who's the one to look out for in the future?
Well, there's a few. I've coached a lad called Ross Mason from the age of 9. He was in Bristol Rovers by the age of 12. He's now a scholar, first year scholar. He trains with the first team on a regular basis. So that's one. Straight away. We'd be here all day. And the funny thing is, some that you don't think are going to get to the real top. In the year's time, 2 years' time, will surprise you. Everyone develops at different ages. You got kids that aren't very tall at the moment, and unfortunately, being a goalie, and if you want to get into academies, the emphasis is on size. A bit too much for me, but there is a certain criteria that you need in terms of height, and that's just the nature of the position that will grow. And sometimes it's like a kid will turn up and he's been coming for a year, so he's technically very good, but there's something missing, and then all of a sudden it's almost overnight, and you're thinking, wow, that's unbelievable, and it's almost literally instantly. But that's a product of trying to, you know, develop people over long periods of time, because these goalies that come to my sessions are there for years. You know, there's not many that turn up and last 5 minutes. It's generally the Xbox warriors that only last 5 minutes. The people, the boys and the parents that want to do it, they're in it for the long haul, because the sessions are all they're always testing, they're always different, they're always engaging, and they're always making them be better.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Steve. Great to have you come in and do that. In the comments on the video, could you just leave the word safe hands so that we know you've been watching this far? But also, I'd just love to know who's the best goalkeeper that you've played against in your league this season? So who do you think is the best keeper in your league? Paul's pointing at himself. I just want to see how many of Steve's come up in the list. Thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel. And if you want to get extra content and support the channel, then check out the Patreon link in the description.